And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
I know some publishers don't watch my videos or listen to my podcast. How do I know that? Because of the games they send me. Like I'll say, I'm not a big fan of solitaire games. Or I'll say something like, I'm not a big fan of heavy war games. And so what do I get here? A heavier war game solitaire game. Now normally I would have booted this right out the door, but this is from DVG Games, Dan Burson Games. And Dan was nice enough to email me back and forth and explain a few things that I had trouble with. Very interactive person. I was very pleased about that. Also, the idea of combat jets sounds interesting, especially when this didn't have a grid and doesn't take the 2 hours that other games do. Now, don't get me wrong. This game has a very steep learning curve, and I suspect that in the long run, it's really not for me. But it is interesting. I do like a lot of the concepts there, and I like how they abstracted a lot of the actual space combat into something very simple. Let's take a look. Now understand I'm not going to explain everything about this game for a couple of reasons. One, I'm probably going to get something wrong. And two, because the game is fairly complex. But I say fairly complex in that I mean the rulebook has, it's not that long of a rulebook. It has, how many pages of rules? I mean, there's a decent amount of pages, but there's pictures on them. And a lot of the things at the end here are just talking about the different weapons and how they work. But again, that is something that I have to look at a lot because I don't understand all these weapons. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to pick what scenario you're going to fight in. And some of these will be easier than others. Some will last longer. It's a campaign in each campaign you can play a short, medium, or long one. So here's Libya 1984, North Atlantic, this is World War III. This is a made-up one. Israeli Defense 2001, Syria 2004. And there's a North Korea one. You know, there's different ones you can pick. So once you've picked one, it will tell you, you'll start in a certain zone in that one, and you'll keep track what zone you're in, and it will tell you what targets you're initially going to be attacking. And so you'll be shuffling those and putting those into a target deck, and as the campaign progresses, you will be having more and more targets available to you, and there's all different sorts of targets. You'll then get a certain amount of points, and you'll be using that points to pick different airplanes or pilots. Each pilot has a code name: Thor, Extra, Waldo, Wedge, Scout, Chili. And each of the different planes, like for example, the Intruder here is used from 1963 to 1997. So some of the planes aren't used in different campaigns. So you have to check on that. And then once you pick the pilots, each pilot comes in 6 flavors in a sense. You have a newbie, green, average, skilled, veteran, and then an ace. And so here's Caveman and his 6 different incarnations, and they get better and better as they go on. Their stats go up, and they're better pilots. They have a less chance of getting shaken by whatever might happen to them. And so you get a certain amount of pilots. Like for some missions, you might get 3, 1 newbie, 3 average, and you can also pay points to upgrade to a higher one. So once you pick your different planes that you use, and the game comes with a good variety of planes, then you go through, and this takes forever, but there's tons of little tokens that you can go through, and you're basically arming them. You get to pick the missiles that you're going to take for each mission. And you can see what your target's going to be. So you say here, okay, our target here is a government building. And so we put the target card here in the middle of the tactical display. You pick which planes you're going to send out on this. There will be an event card. This is to bring some shakiness. Like here's a cruise missile strike that comes up, or here's AAA. And some of these cards can really change the course of the game, because what you'll be doing is you're going to be drawing tokens from the red tokens. You'll be drawing tokens from a bag at the beginning of each round, and be setting up different anti-air units that will be there ready to fight you. And also you'll be drawing different enemy airplanes. Like here's a MiG-23 that will come out to fight you. Sometimes you'll be lucky and you'll draw no bandit. Whew! But they'll be coming into different areas, and then you decide how you're going to be attacking it, and then you basically will take turns, and you'll be moving in, and you'll be shooting your missiles off at them and rolling dice to see if they hit. 10 sided die, yay! And then they'll be attacking you, and your planes might take damage, or you might lose planes. And then once you've destroyed the target, hopefully, got in there and destroyed the target, you'll get points for that. You come back, your planes might be shaken up, and then you get ready for the next mission, and you go on and forth on the campaign. And as you go on the campaign, your pilots might upgrade, like, ooh, my average pilot is now a skilled pilot, or we have the chance to get more weapons. And so there is that kind of element to going on in a campaign. And the designers told me, and I thought this was a great idea, that, I said, well, I'm not real big on solitaire. He said, well, you can play with more than one person. You just, give half the planes to each person. Well, that's not a bad idea. And so that seems like a fun way to play it. Now, I will say that there's a lot of text, and, there's a ton of airplane cards in the game. So you have to look through all those airplanes. But for me, the part that was most confusing for me was the weapons selection, because there's just so many different weapons that you could pick from. And I was thinking, I don't know which weapons are good to use in any situation. If I was I wish the book had come with, like, newbie tactical setup. This is what you should take. I would have recommended that there was a sheet included that says, if you don't know what you're doing, this is what you should take. And this is a decent, good starting scenario. And, I kept constantly have to flip through the rule book and say, okay, what does this jet do? What does this plane do? Because each plane has different things, and how do the different weapons work, and what's the range of the weapons, and what do the numbers mean? And after a while, you get used to, what all the different numbers on the weapons mean. And the tokens are two-sided, so, if I'm not using an AIM-7, then I got an AIM-9 on the other side. So you got to, when you're looking through, and sorting the game out could be a bit of a pain, I suppose. And they're those war game type counters. But all that being said, it is interesting. I like an airplane game where I don't have to say, okay, I move 3 spaces this way and 2 spaces, and where a 5-minute battle lasts for 4 hours. Here, in 4 hours, you probably get 4 different battles in, and each battle you're doing the whole battle coming in. There's randomness on how the different defenses are determined, but in all, it's a lot of fun. That being said, the game's not for me. Now, that's not a negative thing against the game at all. In fact, I see the brilliance of the design. It's just that I'm not huge on solitaire. If I'm going to play a solitaire game, I'd rather just play computer, because here I'm setting this up and getting the cards out, doing all the pieces and putting it all over the place and spending hours and hours, while the computer I can play for like 10 minutes and pause it and come back later. This I really can't do because I have to leave it set up. So I want to play through one whole section at a time. But I can see how some people would really like this game. The ideas of it are really well done. The variety is huge. There's tons of airplanes, tons of different weapons to pick from. There's campaigns, different targets, different enemies. And that also could be seen as a negative, because you're like, okay, now how does this work? And how does this work in this situation? And what does this event card mean exactly? And I won't lie, I read through the rulebook multiple times and even had to ask a couple questions, because I'm not up to date on every military term out there, and I think the rulebook sometimes assumed that I was. I don't know some of the basic terminology. But I think wargamers will get a kick out of this. I think anyone who's looking for a solo game, this is certainly one that you can really immerse yourself into, because even after you go through a whole campaign, play another one, it's going to play out differently, try different planes, try different combinations. So this is a very, very, very good game, and one that I give both thumbs up to. It may not be for me, but I certainly can see a lot of people getting a lot of enjoyment out of this.
Thanks for joining us today. For more written, audio, and video reviews, as well as the #1 board game podcast, check out the website at www.thedicetower.com. Until then, this is Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.